The sun had barely risen over the vast stretches of golden prairie, painting the sky with streaks of crimson and amber. The morning air carried a chill sharper than usual, whispering secrets of a day that would be anything but ordinary. Daniel Carrington, one of the wealthiest ranchers in the county, rode his black stallion along the dirt paths of his sprawling property, the rhythm of hooves syncing with the pounding of his heart. Though he owned thousands of acres, his mornings were usually solitary and quiet, his mind occupied with numbers, land deals, and the endless pursuit of perfection. But today something felt different. A faint curl of smoke in the distance caught his attention. It rose lazily above the horizon, far beyond the fences he had meticulously maintained. Curious and slightly unsettled, Daniel urged his horse toward it. As he approached, the landscape changed. The grass became taller, wilder, and the trees denser, as if this corner of his land had been forgotten by time. And then, almost hidden by the overgrowth, he saw it, a small, dilapidated cabin. Its wood was weathered, grey and splintered, with a sagging roof that threatened to collapse. Smoke spiraled gently from its chimney, hinting at life inside. Daniel's curiosity morphed into unease. Who could be living here in such isolation? He dismounted and walked slowly, boots crunching against the frost-hardened earth. A door creaked open and a frail woman stepped out, her eyes wide and wary. She was dressed in tattered layers, her hair tangled and streaked with grey. Yet, despite her apparent hardship, there was an undeniable strength in her gaze, a spark that made Daniel pause. "Good morning," he said cautiously, not wanting to startle her. The woman flinched slightly but did not retreat. "Morning," she replied softly, her voice tinged with suspicion and fatigue. Daniel noticed her hands, calloused, scarred, and yet gentle in their movements as she adjusted a pot over the fire. Something in her demeanor tugged at him. A story he could not yet hear but felt deeply. He cleared his throat. "I didn't mean to intrude. I live nearby. I just noticed your smoke." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "You're welcome to come in," she said, stepping aside. "But I don't have much to offer." Daniel smiled faintly, shaking his head. "I don't need much. Just a cup of conversation." Inside, the cabin smelled of wood smoke, dried herbs, and something faintly sweet. Dust motes danced in the shafts of morning, light filtering through the cracks in the walls. Daniel could see the hardships etched into every corner. A broken chair, a threadbare rug, a small wooden table scarred with years of use. And yet, despite its poverty, there was a warmth that no mansion on his estate could replicate. She motioned for him to sit. "I'm May," she said simply, as if a single name could contain her entire existence. "Daniel," he replied. "It's an honor to meet you." For a moment, silence stretched between them, comfortable yet loaded with unspoken questions. Daniel couldn't help but notice the resilience in May's posture, the quiet dignity that refused to be diminished by her surroundings. He found himself drawn to her story before a single word had been shared. "Why here?" he asked finally. "Why live so far from everything?" May's eyes softened and she exhaled slowly. "Sometimes the world is too loud, too fast. Here I can breathe. Here I can survive. In my own way." Daniel felt a pang of something unfamiliar, admiration mixed with guilt. He had everything: wealth, land, influence. Yet here was a woman who had nothing, and still she commanded a presence that dwarfed his own. Over the next few hours they talked. Slowly, cautiously, May shared glimpses of her life. The journeys that had led her to this forgotten cabin, the losses she had endured, the kindnesses of strangers that had kept her alive. Daniel listened, captivated. Each story peeled back a layer of the world he thought he understood. The hooks of her experiences, danger, survival, quiet victories, kept him leaning in, eager for more, unable to leave. By noon, Daniel realized he had been at the cabin for hours. He had expected a brief encounter, perhaps a polite exchange, but May had ensnared his curiosity and, unexpectedly, his heart. "Would you like some help?" he asked carefully, aware of the delicate line between generosity and intrusion. "I could fix some things around here. Make it safer, warmer." May hesitated, then shook her head. I survive on my own. I've always done that." Daniel understood the pride in her words, but he also sensed the loneliness beneath them. He pressed gently, not wanting to offend, yet unwilling to turn away. "You don't have to do it alone. Not anymore." For a moment, May's expression faltered, vulnerability peeking through her stoic mask. Then she smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly, and returned to her tasks. Days passed, and Daniel found himself returning. Each visit uncovered new layers of May's life. The delicate art she practiced with her hands, the garden she tended despite meager resources, the stories of love, loss, and survival that she told as she prepared simple meals. Daniel began to see her not as a poor woman in a forgotten cabin, but as a force of nature, quietly defying the world around her. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of fire, Daniel arrived to find May sitting outside, gazing at the horizon. "They say this land is beautiful at sunset," he said softly, taking a seat beside her. May nodded, her eyes fixed on the fading light. Beauty is not always for the eyes. Sometimes it's for the soul. Daniel wanted to ask more, to unravel her thoughts, but words failed him. Instead, he simply watched. The quiet between them filled with unspoken understanding. And then, as if sensing his silent curiosity, May turned to him. "You've been coming here for days," she said, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Why?" Daniel hesitated. "Because you're extraordinary. And because I think you've been surviving alone for too long. Some things are meant to be shared." Her eyes softened, and for a fleeting moment, Daniel thought he saw hope glimmer where hardship had always resided. Weeks turned into months. Daniel's influence began to seep into the cabin's life, not with ostentation or force, but with quiet, thoughtful assistance. A new roof replaced the old one. Shelves held the few possessions May treasured, and warmth returned to the small space that had been her sanctuary. Yet she remained unchanged at her core, proud, independent, resilient. Daniel admired that more than anything. One stormy night, when rain lashed against the cabin walls and the wind howled like a wild animal, Daniel found May struggling to secure a loose window shutter. Without thinking, he stepped forward, catching the wood just as it slipped from her hands. "You don't always have to be strong alone," he said, his voice barely audible over the storm. May looked at him, a mix of surprise and gratitude in her eyes. "Perhaps strength is better shared," she whispered. The storm passed, leaving the world washed and renewed. And in that quiet aftermath, something shifted. Daniel realized that what had begun as curiosity, as a simple encounter with a woman in a forgotten cabin, had transformed into a bond neither could ignore. Their lives, once separate and solitary, now intertwined in ways that defied expectation. Months later, Daniel stood at the edge of the prairie, gazing at the cabin that had become a home not just for May, but for both of them in spirit. He had entered her world as a wealthy rancher, expecting nothing, and had found everything: resilience, courage, and a love forged not by luxury, but by the shared human experience of survival and trust. May emerged from the cabin, carrying a small basket of herbs she had harvested. She smiled at him, and in that simple gesture, Daniel understood the depth of their connection. Words were unnecessary. The quiet understanding between them spoke volumes. "I never thought someone like you would care," May said softly, setting the basket down. Daniel took her hand, holding it gently. "I don't care about labels or wealth," he said. "I care about you, and about the life we can build together, here, on this land, in this moment, in every tomorrow." May's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and she nodded. "Then let's build it," she said. And so, in a forgotten cabin on the edge of a vast prairie, two worlds collided, not through wealth or power, or convenience, but through the quiet magic of empathy, resilience, and the courage to embrace the unexpected. A millionaire rancher had discovered the extraordinary in the ordinary, and a woman who had survived life's harshest trials had found companionship, respect, and love. No grand halls, no glittering mansions, no fortune could compare to the richness of what they shared. And in the warm glow of a simple cabin, with the prairie stretching endlessly around them, their lives began anew, powerful in its simplicity, profound in its humanity, and unforgettable in its truth. Because sometimes the greatest treasures are not gold or land, but the human connections that change the course of our lives forever.